don't think papers exist anymore, but if you have one, print it off, please.
If you have one, throw it away. It's 2025.
Right. So that's the first one. But the second thing is that after the whole interview, after the whole talk, Q&A and everything, Brian will be signing, but he'll do it in the middle of the store. So the nice trick to it is that the counter is in between here and there. So the amount of time it takes for him to get from up here to over there, you guys will buy all the books out. There you go. So my name's Rosie. I'm the events coordinator here at Readers. I think that one of the best parts about working in a small town in a bookstore that's been around a long time is that we sometimes get messages from great people like Lisa right here saying, hey, I know this author, I think you guys could do this. And we go, okay, well, we'll see what we can do. And we get to try, and then we get to make it happen. So I was looking Brian up. I was not a TV viewer as a young person, so I did not know you were on television. But as a multi-hyphenate, he's been. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget everything here. It was a very long list. An actor, a comedian, a radio talk show host, a playwright, and an author. And that is a very long list for one person. And I think that one of the nice things too is that Laura Zimmerman could be here for us to have a conversation format. And the cool story here is that they both worked for KCBU Channel 2. Which I heard it was some years ago.
That's so mean.
So we're good. Okay, so they're going to tell you guys a lot more about those stories, but also about Brian's latest book endeavor, which is Shadows of Justice, which is in the thriller genre, and it's a great way to think about how real life, real thoughts can inform themselves into what is hopefully a fictional story and really ties you along and pulls you along. So without any further ado, you guys can welcome both Brian and Laura.
Oh, it's good to see you. I have not, we were talking, I haven't seen you in literally before tonight. It's been 30 years.
It's been 30 years.
Wow. We worked together. We worked together in Mornington too.
We were at Channel 2 when they, like, a morning show was like new. Like, oh my God, we're gonna do a morning show. Like, it was an unheard of thing. And so it was, it was all kind of from scratch. And it was trying to pull people from those network morning shows like Good Morning America to see local things. And why not? Because you get your local weather, your local traffic, and us goofballs on the air. And you had been mostly doing comedy before that, right?
Yeah, I've been doing stand-up primarily. Yeah, it got me off the road.
Yeah, and then you had to start getting up at 4 in the morning.
3:30.
3:30, me too. I know.
3:30 in the morning.
I was with you.
If the sun was up, I was late. You know those days?
And what did you think about walking in a newsroom and being part of a newsroom?
The whole thing was a fluke. I mean, my entire career is a fluke. Basically, everything that I've done is true. It's
What?
the universe did something. But the way I ended up there was I have been doing radio with KGO, and I had an agent who was friends with Fred Zender, who was our news director. It was like the Edward R. Murrow of news as far as integrity and professionalism and journalism in the Bay Area. And I had this idea about writing funny news commentaries. So he got me a spot to come in one day on a Tuesday, and I wrote a 2-minute piece on something in the news. I was in topical jokes on stage, and Rosemary Thomas Swartz, the executive producer, liked it, and started having me on twice a week. And then one day I'm sitting in the back. I used to come and sit in the back and then watch the show after I did my part. And I said, you know what you guys need? You need a funny black weatherman. And I'm joking. I'm totally joking. And I get a call that day. She says, talk to Kevin O'Brien, the general manager. He wants to have lunch with you on Friday. I go, why? We never met. And I go, why? She goes, to talk about your idea. I go, what idea? She goes, well, you're doing the weather. I go, well, I was kidding. She goes, well, you've got a meeting. Next thing you know, I'm on the weather. This was easy. It's a Bay Area. It's going to rain or it's not. You're right. I told you it's going to rain or it's not.
But because we are here to talk about your book.
Yes.
The primary character of the book is a reporter, Topher. The name. Where's that name from?
Well, that's it. Oh, that's it. I should mention, this is the second book.
Second of
in-
two
in-
books,
in
two
the,
books and 3 and 4 are on the way.
Yeah, 3 and 4 are on the way in the Topher Davis series. And he's an African-American investigative journalist. This is what Tom Bakar did at
Exactly.
Channel 2.
Yeah,
And where the name comes from, like everything I do, so the social commentary. The
Yeah.
mystery and the fun part's all there, but there's social commentary. And I read an article that when people who are hiring are white, and they're looking at applications, if the name sounds ethnic, there is a bias. And it's not a conscious bias in most cases, but there is a bias. So Topher has gone to San Francisco State in the BECA program, like most of the other
Yes.
people who worked with
many
us
people
did.
work there.
And he was trying to get internships under his real name, Christopher Davis, Christopher Robin Davis, because his mother loved the Pooh books. And he would send out Chris Davis, and he wasn't getting calls because it sounded black. So he thought, what's the whitest white boy name I can think of? That's part of my name, and there's all these white actors.
That's
And
what you
Topher,
choose over again.
and then he starts getting calls.
And,
And that's again, social commentary.
well, and one thing about your writing that I love, is you have so much detail about like walking into the newsroom and going into the edit booth. And it's just so real. It's like you're inside the book. And your detail also, you're writing for Topher when he's getting ready to go to something. He'll come home and change his clothes, and you'll describe like the brand of shirt that he's wearing and exactly the shoes. And those are too dressy. He goes into more casual, different shoes. And you're very detailed in all your descriptions of the characters and the spaces. And the newsroom descriptions just grab me because it's just so accurate, right? In the edit bay, closing the door, getting it done, coming back out, running out on the set, all of that. Is that the way you've always written, or did you have to learn how to do that?
Well, where that comes from me is from my work doing solo plays. I have done a total of 7 solo shows so far, starting with Genuine Black Man, was my
Yeah.
first book based on. And what if you've never seen a solo play, basically it's, there are different ways that different performers do them, but the way I do them, it's a full play and I'm just playing all the parts. You know, I'll narrate, but I'll do the voices and act out the scenes and do the parts. And what I realized I was doing was I was painting word pictures because a lot of blind people come to my shows and I go, do you get it all? And they say, we see everything that it is that you're describing. And I got that from radio because I've been all my life a fan of old time radio, and it's theater of the mind, and so that's kind of what I'm doing here.
Well, it really comes through. You feel like you're part of it a lot. I mean, the huge invasion of the news reporters outside the house, and you know, then dealing with the police and and what they tell you can do and where you can go and what you can't do, and it's just a great characteristic of your writing. Each of your 2 books that I've read, the first book and this book, kind of carry also an element of social commentary. In Outraged, there was a thread of what happens in police shootings of young black men and what doesn't happen. And there's a thread that there are officers being shot, and there's a link, they shot young black men who were unarmed.
And weren't punished, right?
Right, and were never punished for it. And so it was an interesting element of it, but the story has its own whole mystery beyond that. And in the current book, there's this interesting comparison. We all have seen this and we know about it, but a suburban mom is killed, and it's a huge crisis, and the media is there day and night outside the house, and everyone's waiting to see what happens. And about the same time, a little bit later, a young black mom, more urban, not suburban, is killed and murdered, and her body's also found, and there's like not much coverage. There's not, at first she's missing, but there's just not that much attention on it, and we know that that's true. Is that from your news background that you think of that, or just today's headlines background?
Well, the way that this story came to be was when I wrote Outraged during the pandemic because I had a solo play that was supposed to open in April of 2020, and so now I've got nothing to do.
So
And
it was the outrage.
I was on I was on lockdown with my son as a musician, my youngest son, and we were going crazy. And I thought I spent 20 years learning how to write crime fiction. I decided back in 2000 that later on when we got too old to perform or whatever, this is what I would do. and so I'm not too old to perform. I just had nothing to do for a year. So I had, I learned how to write crime fiction, and basically I had a master class from the greatest crime fiction writers in the world, because I came up with a great idea that I have a radio show. So I'm going to have on all my favorite authors and ask them how they do what they do. And one of my favorites was Sue Grafton.
Oh, yeah.
Love those classes. And she taught me, I would pick their brain. They didn't realize I was picking their brains during the commercials. And she said, first thing you got to know is who did it and why. That's you got to know that at the very beginning. And I asked her, so where did A's for alibi come from? And she said she was going through a horrible divorce and custody battle, and she would lay awake at night thinking of ways to kill her ex. That's what she said.
Never know.
And she goes, and I could never hurt a fly, and I would get caught, so she killed him in a book. So if you read A's for alibi, the murder victim is her ex-husband. And but years later, they laughed about it and were friends about it. But she was so sweet to me, and I had her on TV and radio for years, up until her last book was Why. She didn't make it to Z. The last interview was like 2 weeks before she passed. But I learned from her. I learned from Why had Walter Mosley on. I read Devil in a Blue Dress, and we talked about his first book took place in the 40s, and I said, your details of 1940s, Los Angeles is so, it's so vivid. What kind of research did you do? He just made it up. I made it up. He goes, it's called fiction. I made it up. Because LA, there are some places that everyone knows. Everybody's heard of Sunset Boulevard. We all know, and there's some research, obviously he did, but and so I learned, okay, it's okay to make, it's fiction. So I learned a lot from a lot of different people. So I knew I had to have a family, and the family is, well, first of all, I knew that I wanted my protagonist. Another thing mostly I learned is you want your protagonist, your investigator, to be someone who the audience will root for, somebody who they like. Because you don't want to, you're talking about spending a number of hours with someone.
Yeah, you are. You really are. You want to care about them.
So I knew that I wanted him to be African American. I knew that all the books I was reading, and I've been a crime fiction fan since the Hardy Boys, literally.
I know. I was Nancy Drew. I know.
Same writer.
See?
Edward Stratmeyer. Same writer. Same writer. So I knew I wanted to be African American, and all the books I was reading, there was either detectives, cops, an occasional lawyer. So I thought, I've never seen an investigative broadcaster. They say, right, and I've been in newsrooms for years. Between KGO and KTVU and KGO television. So I created Topher Davis. I wanted him African American. I realized that every one of these detectives have a sidekick who's a badass. Spencer it's Hawk with Elvis Colas Joe Pike. Right. Somebody beat up 10 guys in a bar, and I thought, I've never seen a woman do that. So why don't I give him a sister, make her a cop, a homicide cop, and she's the one, and I'll make him Lois Lane. Who she's always got to say, because he can't fight, he can't shoot, he's, but he's smart as a whip, and he could, So I had to, I figured out the rest of the characters, and so that's what I had. And so I didn't know what to write about, what do I do with it now that I've got this? And then there was a shooting in San Leandro, where I live, of an unarmed African-American man in Walmart who was in mental distress. And I started, it was the same summary as George Floyd and Sandra Bland and all of those stories. And they all pretty much played out the same way. And I thought, why don't I write a story about what it's like for the family of the person who was killed and the family of the officer. So that became Outraged. So the way it worked was every morning I'd get up, I'd go in the spare bedroom and write. My son would go, he had all his music equipment, go in his room and do music. End of the shutdown, I had a novel, he had an album.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's
So
pretty good.
so I sell it. It sold I'm shocked. It sold in like a couple of weeks, and then when it was getting ready to come out, it came out in April last year. They said, "Do you want to write another one?" And I said, "Yeah," because I wanted it to be a series.
Yeah.
That was the idea.
I mean, because we all love series, right? Whatever that is, it's so much fun. Yeah.
So the idea came from I was on radio during the Lacey Peterson case.
Right. I mean, you were on radio for like
27 years.
27 years. Yeah. You did a show forever.
Yeah, they put me in 2 weeks ago. They put me in the Bay Area Radio Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Right. Surreal. I was on during that case, and I remember that what most people don't know is when that case, and you remember the case, because there's still documentaries and things about it. And the coverage was ridiculous. They're following Scott Peterson to In-N-Out Burger and stuff. It was just ridiculous. And I remember the Chronicle did an audit, because most people don't know is that there was another woman who was pregnant, who was the same age, by the name of Evelyn Hernandez, who was I think it was from El Salvador or Guatemala or something. She was a maid in one of the hotels in San Francisco. Lacey's age, pregnant. Lacey's torso was found floating in San Francisco Bay. Evelyn's torso was found floating in San Francisco Bay. And most people now, I'm telling you this, you don't know about it. And if you look on Hulu now, they're finally giving her some coverage. There's a documentary called Murder Has Two Faces. And they talk about her. So the Chronicle did an audit to see how many stories had been written about Lacey Peterson. And up to that point, there have been 2,000 Lacey Peterson stories. Evelyn Hernandez, 2.
Oh, wow.
So it always stuck with me. So I wanted to write a story about the disparity in coverage and in attention between, because the police don't pay any attention to it, because it's not, in my victim in this book, one of them, the first one, the main one, is in, I shouldn't say the main one, the one that starts the book is in Pleasanton, upscale, primarily white community, and things like a woman going missing, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in places like this. Whereas Danica, who's the African American woman, is from East Oakland. And when you go to the police, she just ran off. She'll be turned up in a couple days. That's it. Yes, that's what they say. And so I wanted to look at that and the reasons why this happens.
I think that, and it's both of your books, the story just winds its way, and you do not expect. I did not foresee the exact outcome as it was.
Oh, the twist in
Yes, it was a real twist, and the discovery of it. What leads to the discovery of it? One small thing that didn't get noticed at first. But also, I just want to ask you this: murder is a hard thing to write about. Murder is a hard thing to live with as you're sitting there day after day as a writer. And how do you you could be doing mysteries that aren't all that way, but how do you go through your day and do that? And how do you put that in its right place?
I will say this. If the police ever search my search history on my laptop, I'm going to jail. I use ChatGPT. People who use ChatGPT, but not to write. I use it for, I was looking yesterday. Well, how long do you have to hold a pillow over someone's face before they smother to death?
Oh my God.
And there are questions like that. What are the signs that someone's been smothered to death? And they can, that's the thing, I use chat for stuff like that. But it's just, I've always loved, the Hardy Boys weren't murder, but then after the Hardy Boys, I read all of Earl Stanley Gardner's Perry Mason books. And those are all murder. And you never figure it out, and I figure out why, because Gardner, he doesn't give you all the information. That's why. It's like at the end, what do you mean you have a twin brother? You don't want to see a twin.
That's fair. Yeah.
But it's just, I've always been fascinated by it. And I have to be careful because murder shouldn't be entertainment. The murder itself isn't the entertainment, it's the solving of it.
It is. It's who done it. That's what is most interesting. Now you have 3 sisters? 4 sisters. So was that influential in forming the character of Lynn's?
Of Lynn, his sister. She's based physically, her physicality is based on my oldest sister, Tracy. And as well as her personality, actually.
Who apparently bossed you around
quite a bit. Yes. I'm the oldest and the only boy of the 5. Toilet seat was left up, one direction. One direction. And so the back and forth, that's what people say they like the most about these books is they like the relationship between the brother and the sister. And that's us.
I do, I love it. Yeah, it's one of the best parts of it.
That's us.
Well, and you're in their world. You're in the world. I love the brother-in-law with the restaurant, and you go and get your breakfast, you get your omelet with crab and honeydew melon on the side.
Very good.
Because that's the way you write. I mean, the way you write, I can just see it. I can almost taste it. But what's your practice of writing, like how do you not like procrastinate, or how do you like, you know, keep it going every day? Like how do you schedule it and manage to write each day, or whatever your schedule is?
Well, when I decided I was gonna do this 20 years ago, I bought 2 books. I bought A is for Alibi, and I bought Stephen King's On Writing. And if you want to write, I always tell everybody this, if you want to write, read that book. I read it every couple of years. It is the best book on writing I've ever read in my life. It's the book that he wrote, first book he wrote after remember when he got hit by that van and he was hospitalized? This was the first book he wrote. You know, he couldn't sit up straight enough without pain to write. And finally he was able to write this book. And the first half of it is autobiographical. It's about his life as a writer from being a little kid sending in, you know, to Ellery Queen magazine, and he's hit Alfred Hitchcock and being rejected, all the way up to him starting to write that book after the accident. The second half of it is how to write. And it's, you know, when to use adverbs, when not, you know. And one thing I'm always in my head, he says, never use adverbs. It's terrible writing. You know, stay away from words that end in ly. And he writes 1,500 words a day, every day, except for Christmas and his birthday. And that's why he's so prolific. And he says, now I want you, the reader, if you want to write 5 days a week, 1,000 words a day. We'll do it at the same place, do it at the same time, and you do it, whether you feel like it or not. Because most of writing I have found, and I've written now, what, I published actually 6 books. 3 of them are based on plays, based on plays.
You're at the screenplay first now, or the
Yeah, and then
the book.
I turned it into a book, and then I've written the one memoir and the two mysteries. And what I found, and it's the truth, is it's ass and seat. That's mostly it. Because I want to write, but you know, it's got to be raining outside, and I need a fire, and it's got to stop. If you want to write, you do it. Because most days you don't feel like it. Most days I don't feel like it, and then once you get into it, you get excited, I get it. And first draft's the hardest. First draft's horrible. I'm in the first draft of the 3rd book, and it's awful. It's like a root canal with no Novocaine. The first draft. But then it's fun afterwards, because then I can go back and I know that, you know, for example, that thing that you mentioned in Outraged was something that I didn't know until the end of the book, and I was able to go back on the second draft and I put it in and tied those 2 things together. And so that's where the fun is. I know now that this is going to happen, because I don't outline. I mean, I know the story, but I don't outline, and I can go back and drop in breadcrumbs. You know, the second draft is fun. That's the most fun draft.
And how is it taking criticism? Not that we didn't have nonstop day after day criticism on TV.
Oh God.
I mean, yeah, they hired people just to criticize you. It was ridiculous.
Well, I do. Yeah, I do one-man shows for God's sake. I live and die based on what the critics write, and so far they've been kind.
But when they read your first draft, someone is reading this.
Nope,
and they come
nobody
back.
reads it. Nobody ever sees the first draft.
Oh, okay. You do a second draft before you send it to.
No. The way my process is, I do a first draft, then I go back and I do a second draft. I have 2 beta readers. My baby sister Heather, who is a thriller fanatic. She reads, and my friend Pam Jones, and Pam was Rob Reiner's executive assistant for 25 years. She typed every script from When Harry Met Sally up to the bucket list. So she knows story, and she knows character and motivation, how things work, and continuity and those things. So the 2 of them then read the second draft, and they'll send me their notes. Okay. And then I'll write a 3rd draft based on notes that they get, and they're always good, the notes that they give me. And a lot of times they give me the same notes. And then after the 3rd draft, then I send it to my agent, and then she reads it, and she may have a couple of notes here and there. Usually so far, knock wood, it hasn't been many, and then I'll fix that, then it goes to the publisher. But that's my, you know, there are others who, you know, I forget, who was it I was reading that, like Neil Simon would write, you know, Neil Simon's first play, he wrote 23 drafts of. And it's like, the thing with the book, what I'm learning too is that, you know, when I first wrote Not a Genuine Black Man, same thing. By the time you're ready for the book to come out, you're sick of it. Because you have written it so many times, and you've rewritten it, and then you've had to go through it again for corrections, and go through it again for, you know, and it's just, now, and you're tired of it by the time, you know, and especially when you're on to the next book, it's kind of hard to remember, because I'm in the middle of the next book, but I have to go back and do changes on the first one.
Yeah.
you know.
You've had success in so many different arenas. I just want to like remind people that they may not know this about you, but you also did movies. Like these are some things like that you've done that I didn't know that much about. Really, you never mentioned it when you were in the newsroom.
Well, I hadn't done anything.
That you've been
I hadn't
Morgan
done
Freeman's son in
Well, that was after.
the Bucket List.
That was
Oh,
in
that was
another
after.
song.
That was right after. you
That was
did
out. That was in '07. That was 10 years after.
Venom 2.
Venom 2.
Yeah.
I played a reporter in Venom 2.
I'm sorry, I missed that movie. I don't know. It just
It's a Marvel movie.
Okay. And then,
Made by Sony.
you're in Spinal Tap too.
Well, no, I shot a scene for Spinal Tap
Did
2.
you make it in?
No, it did. It was a great scene too.
I bet
It was a great, hysterical scene. But the problem with that is, and Rob Reiner is a brilliant editor, and he's helping me develop Genuine for television.
Okay.
Rob and his producer partner, wife Michelle. And what Rob does for the Spinal Tap films is he shoots 100 hours of footage that he then mostly all ad-lib footage. I mean, the script was 10 pages with a paragraph in each page. Here's where your setting is.
Yeah.
Talk about whatever you want. Make sure you mention that you have a duck, because it's part of the plot later.
Okay.
And I'm just making this up.
No, I've read
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, and this is how
so
he does it.
avant-garde.
It's how he does it. So, and then he takes that 100 hours and goes through every frame and cuts it down to 82 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And so you've got to,
Yeah.
so you have to, because he called, he loved my scene. He called me the night of, and so it was wonderful, it was great. And then he called me, a couple months later and goes, I hate this, I had to cut it. Because I had to, it didn't further the story as
No.
funny as it is, and you have to murder your darlings, is what they call it.
But it is nice to have someone like his backing.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's pretty amazing. I want you to tell the story of why you came up with the title, Not a Genuine Black Man. But first I want to mention it's the longest running one-man show in San Francisco history. Over 1,000 performances, maybe much more than that now.
But no, just 1,000. I brought it back last year for the 20th anniversary and the 1,000th. So I've done 1,002, I think now.
Okay, and tell me about that title. Where did the title come from?
Where the title came from is I knew that I wanted to, when I decided I wanted to write crime fiction, it was 20 years ago, and I was going through a life transition and trying to decide what I was going to do with my life and my career. And I knew I wanted to do a one-man show. I knew I wanted to write crime fiction. Now, the issue with the one-man show is I had no idea what to write about. So I had Carl Reiner on as a guest, coincidentally, a couple of weeks later. And I said to Carl, I want to write a play, and I don't know what to write about. And he said, every writer, performer goes through this dilemma. He goes, for me, it comes to this crossroads, he said. He goes, for me, it was 1959, Sid Caesar's show had just gotten canceled, I've been writing for Sid Caesar and shows for 9 years, now what do I do? And he read the book by the great Fred Allen, it's one of my comedy heroes, Treadmill to Oblivion, in which Fred Allen says to find the piece of ground that you alone stand on and write from there. And Carl thought, what's my piece of ground? Well, I'm a married comedy writer, I live in New Rochelle with my wife and kids, and I write for a comedy show in New York. And that idea became the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Wow.
That's where it came from. That was Carl's life. And so he goes, you've got to find a piece of ground that you alone stand on. And I go, I don't know what that is. He goes, that's what you got to figure out. So I took a couple of weeks off and I come back into the station at KGO. And I had all this mail, a lot of snail mail. And as you probably know, people write, at least in talk radio, people will write you, well, same thing in news. Snail mail, it's old ladies and kooks. That's it. Old ladies and nuts. Oh, a lot of San Quentin, yeah. I was at Pelican Bay. I was big at Pelican Bay. I was big.
I had more followers at San Quentin.
And I had a guy who used to write me ransom notes. What I would come because he would cut the letters out of magazines and paste you suck and all the, I call them ransom notes.
So anyway, you're finding your.
So I'm going through this mail and I see a typewritten letter that's unsigned, with no return address rather. And I open it up, it's unsigned, and it says, as an African American, I'm disgusted every time I hear your voice because you are not a genuine black man. And I thought, Bingo. That is my piece of ground. Because I've heard that nonsense for a lot of my life. You're not really black, you're white on the inside. So, and that's, okay, why is that? Because I grew up in San Leandro, California, next door to Oakland, at a time when San Leandro was well over, depending on whose numbers you believe, between 94 and 99.9% white, and us. and us. And you assimilate, you want to listen, you want to fit in.
Yeah.
So I decided I was going to write a show about what it was like to be different, what it was like to be the only one. And then I found out afterwards about San Leandro's national reputation as a racist bastion of, well, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights called it, a racist bastion of white supremacy.
But when you were young, you didn't know that.
No. I knew at 8 years old when we
Yeah.
moved there, growing up, driving down the street, yelling the N-word out the car window as I'm walking to school and all of these things. But that said, that's what the hell came out from. It was a crepe letter. And that was my piece of ground, and it literally changed my life.
It's going to be time for you guys to ask questions, so I want to make sure we carve that out so you guys can ask some questions. But one of the things that we talked about a little bit earlier that you mentioned, that you feel like right now it's a good time to bring that one-man show back because of what's going on in the world. So talk about that a little bit.
I brought it back, as I said, I did the original run of that show, went San Francisco, LA, off Broadway from 2004 to 2012. And then I wrote my second show, The Waiting Period, after that. And I put it away, and I would bring it up from time to time for, charity events and things like that. And so I brought it back last year for the 20th anniversary and the 1,000. Figured out I did 999. Or 998, then I did one kind of as a warm up to get to 99, and then we had the anniversary of 1,000. And because it's wild. It's a 2-hour show, and I'm playing 30-something parts in this 2-hour show. And so that show is the way we promoted it was it's an evening of laughter, tears, and sociology. Because I talk about all of these issues of the issues of race, of being different, depression that I deal with as a part in it, and all of these redlining and the history in the suburbs, and especially here in California, where people of color work out. And when I first did it, people always, they laugh and they cry, which is how I designed it. I watched All in the Family. I watched the first 2 seasons. I wrote it where it would be funny and heavy and funny and heavy. And they laugh and cry, and they usually stand for me at the end. But the vibe has always been, thank God those days are over. Then I did the 1,000 last April, and when I did the 1,000, they laughed and cried and stood. But the vibe was, this is like now. That's what it felt like. And so I did it again in Sacramento about 4 weeks ago. Same thing. It just feels different. There's more. It makes me sad that it's relevant. It should be a relic. It's not.
Yeah, it should be the past.
Yeah, and it's not. So I'm bringing it back as a full-fledged. I'm going to do a full-fledged tour of it. I'm just figuring out how to put it together.
Great.
And Rob Reiner's helping me develop for TV, as I said.
Oh, good. I'm glad about that. I mean, I think both of your books that I've read also could definitely have a movie in them. I could definitely see them on
Oh,
screen.
thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if you're thinking about that, but one other thing though, when we talk about like what's going on today, how do you feel about the media today and media coverage today? Compared to when you were there, and that was, more than 35 years ago.
And this breaks my heart too, and that is, cable news, with the exception of when it was just CNN, once you brought Fox News into it, MSNBC into it, and others, it became more commentary than news. And that's one of the biggest problems we have in this country right now, is that most viewers don't know the difference between journalism and commentary. And if I had a nickel for every time somebody referred to me as a journalist, I would stop and go, dumb, that's an insult to journalists to call me a journalist. I am a commentator.
Yeah.
My daughter Carolyn, with a journalism degree, who's a managing editor of a news site, she had worked in TV news at Channel 7. She is a journalist. I'm not a journalist, And so, but at least broadcast news, I knew I was going to get a straight line for broadcast news. Now, CBS the Tiffany Network, CBS, which has been the leader in journalistic integrity since Edward R. Murrow stood on the rooftops of London during the bombing. And Walter Cronkite, you know, the most trusted man in America. Now you have a right-wing racist blogger who is the head of CBS News, who's going to put a Fox News anchor in what was Walter Cronkite's chair. And you know, and I don't care whether you're right or whether you're left, that's not somebody who should be, you know, who should be giving you the news. It's not someone you can trust to give the straight story to. And with ABC, it's the same problem. With ABC, it's, you know, Stephanopoulos and the others are all, I'm not questioning their integrity. I question the integrity of the company that would pay the blackmail that they paid in order not to anger the administration over something that Stephanopoulos said. So now I can't even trust broadcasters.
I think it's safe to say that had we in any way, shape, or form ever exhibited any partisan characteristics while working in NBC, you know, too, I mean, that you'd be fired. Like you couldn't be partisan. I mean,
That's right.
Fred Zender, the news director of that you talked about, he would call you back in because there was, of the two sides of the story, one was 30 seconds longer than the other, and it had to be the same amount of time. Like there was a very strong, especially in local news, push for fairness and always impartiality. That's a big change, you're right.
They should never know, the audience, the viewer should never know what your political leanings are.
No,
Ever.
it should never be playwright.
Ever.
It's a big change, isn't it?
No, it's a huge change.
Yeah.
And I'm finding that the most, and it's still slanted, but at least I'm getting a straight story, is the Midas Touch podcast network. They've got 5 million, almost 6 million daily viewers and listeners, and a full staff, and they are covering things that nobody else is covering.
Interesting.
You know, and fact checking and everything else.
Well, good. Anybody have any questions?
Yes.
So, Not a Genuine Black Fan is an amazing show.
Oh, thank you.
And it's gonna be amazing to have you tour it again. I think it'll really be effective. But,
I saw your theater here, by the way,
Yeah.
and I think I might bring it here.
Yes.
Would you
Yes.
guys come and visit?
yes, absolutely.
Talk to Roger and Tony, please.
Yeah, we'll get that done quickly, but stand-up. I remember that you did stand-up, I never, like, how does the stand-up inform everything else about what you do? Because that's a whole different
I
world.
started stand-up comedy the week after I graduated from high school when I was 18 years old. Tommy T's Comedy House opened up the street from my house. And Tommy Thomas had been my CYO baseball coach when I was 10. And when I was in high school, I used to go to San Francisco to the Punchline and Cobb's and the other cafe and watch comics with a fake ID. I got in Berkeley for $20. Said I was Dr. Copeland from Ohio. Never got questioned. Once I got questioned. Dr. Copeland. So once a security guy goes, "You look really young for a doctor." I said, "Prodigy." And so I asked Tommy, you know, when I didn't have an open night, night, I'd like to try this. And he goes, "No, but I got a comic sick tonight. Can you do 15 minutes?" And I go, "Sure." Now I'm 18 and stupid. I've never done it before. It's 6 o'clock, the show's at 9. So I remember sitting in my bedroom, I was still living at home. And I opened up the paper and I wrote like 15 minutes of jokes about, I didn't remember any of it. I just remember it was all topical stuff. The Falkland War was going on in there. I said, this is like, so June of 82, May of 82. But they laughed. I mean, I mean, not uproariously, but I got laughs and it felt good and I wanted more. So I kept writing, and eventually I got to, after a number of years while I was headlining these clubs, then I signed with a big agency, the William Morris Agency, and they were sending me out with their acts. I toured with Smokey Robinson, Aretha Franklin, Dionne Warwick, Natalie Cole, Lionel Richie, Ray Charles, there's so many, so many. And in fact, I was touring with Smokey when I opened Genuine, because Genuine was supposed to just run for 6 weeks, and then I was touring with Smokey Robinson and Gladys Knight. And I took 6 weeks off, and the beginning of Genuine is straight stand-up. Before I go into the character stuff, it's straight stand-up, this is black, that's not, this is black, that's not. And my director says, we need a place for you to try it, and I have no time to go anywhere and do a set. But I was booked with Smokey and Gladys to do 2 sold-out shows of the Universal Amphitheater. 5,000 people. So I tried it there, which is the dumbest thing. And a show like that, and a venue like that, and I'm trying out stuff. You don't do that. But it worked, and that's why I knew if it'll work here, it'll work anywhere. But yeah, I was supposed, I was booked. I was supposed to go back out on the road right after 6 weeks, but it kept getting extended, and I still do stand up, occasionally, and I produce the shows, and I do a New Year's Eve show, but it informs everything I do the same way. It's mostly social commentary, and it's funny, and hopefully it's funny, and it's the discipline of writing. It's the same thing. It's the discipline of writing.
Different kinds of writing.
Different kinds. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you are very amazing in a number of different things you can do. Yes.
I'm a huge fan. I've seen you for years in the Marsh Theater, and I thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for that. I'm really interested in hearing what you had to say about the waiting period. Sort of what it's meant for you as a performer, what it's meant for you as a writer. It was one of the most remarkably frank and beautiful pieces of theater I've ever been to. So I'd love to hear kind of what the afterlife has been for you with that.
That is very different from any of my other shows, and was a real shock and surprise to a lot of people. I suffer from depression, and I have since childhood. I didn't realize what it was. I was 36 before I was actually diagnosed with it. So I went through a really bad bout in 2008.
Let me just give them a little bit of a clue that the waiting period.
Well, I'll tell
Okay,
you.
you tell me.
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
So I went through a really bad bout in 2008, where in a very short period of time, life took off. My grandmother who raised me had a stroke, woke up one Sunday morning, had a stroke and died. I got into a car accident where I totaled my car, and in that accident I had spinal cord damage, and I had to have spinal cord surgery, and they weren't sure if I was going to walk again. And I spent, recovery was 3 months on the couch in a neck brace with Vicodin. And I was super depressed, bad. I was suicidal. So I went to a gun shop and I bought a .32 caliber Beretta Tomcat to end it with. But in California, there's a 10-day waiting period before you can get your hands on a handgun. So on day 6, I came to my senses. And so I thought, as the years went by afterwards, I should do something with this, but I don't know what. Then my youngest son's best friend's cousin, 15 years old, one day sent out a bunch of texts to his family and friends saying, "I love you," and then laid down in front of a moving train in Oakland. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to tell my story, because maybe if I tell my story, some other 15-year-old kid will realize that it's not just, him, that other people, estimated 20 or 25% of people in this country deal with depression, severe depression at times. And so that was a real scary one. I didn't know what was going to happen, and I had to warn people around me beforehand, and I outed myself on television. I was doing 7 Live on Channel 7 at the time. And I had Ross come in. I had Ross McGowan come in, who I learned everything about TV interviewing from Ross McGowan. And I asked Ross if he would interview me on my show. And that's when I went public with it. And I got better reviews for that than I got for Genuine. I got the little man. Only time I ever had the little man out of the chair was for that show. So I did it for about a year and a half, and I had to stop because the scenes where what I do is I take you through the mind of somebody who's severely depressed, waiting for that 10 days to run out. And I also interview people I interviewed, a girl who's a cutter, and a firefighter with PTSD, and just talked about various issues of mental health in the show.
And this is you being all those people.
Me doing all those characters. And so in the scenes where I'm depressed as an actor, it won't work for the audience if it's not real for me. So as an actor, I make myself go there. I make myself go into the frame of mind I was in when I was that depressed. And after a while, it started to creep up on me, and it started to pull me down again. And so that was it. I had to stop. I had to stop doing it. I was still in great crowds and everything else, but I couldn't do this anymore. So fast forward a couple of years after that, and Robin Williams committed suicide. And all of us in the comedy community in San Francisco knew and loved Robin. And at the time, before we knew about the Lewy bodies, the things that he was dealing with, we all thought it was depression. And my publicist at the time, in Los Angeles, had told me that he had been Rock Hudson's publicist when Rock Hudson told the world that he had AIDS. And when he came out with that, when he went public, it changed the conversation about AIDS. Because you remember before, it was only those people who got it. And now here's somebody we know. He's been in our houses with McMillan and wife. We've seen him on the big screen for years. And it changed the conversation. And he said, maybe this is a chance to change the conversation about depression, which I call the last stigmatized disease. So I thought, well, I'd like to do it, maybe I could do it again as like a suicide prevention tool. And I can't do it every night, but I can do 2 a month. And I'll do 2 a month, one in the March in the city, one at the March in Berkeley, and I'll do it free to the public as a suicide prevention tool. And we funded it through a GoFundMe, and I've been doing it for 10 years. I didn't know it was going to grow this long. I've been doing it 10 years, and it does help people. I get some. Do I have time to tell a story?
Yes,
Is
and
that
then,
right,
yeah,
right?
and,
Then we're gonna just a quick story.
yeah.
Okay. So I get all kinds of emails.
Just keep going.
I get all kinds of emails from people about how the show's affected them, because what I try to reach people who are struggling. Who I say, are you one of us, is how I put it. I try to reach those of us, and I also try to reach people who have family members who are us, and who don't get it, and can't understand why with the sun shining, why would you be depressed, or look at the house you live in, how could you be, and they don't, you wouldn't try to talk somebody out of Lou Gehrig's disease, for God's sake, but for some reason they try to talk you out of this disease. So one of the emails I got, the one that sticks out to me the most, this woman wrote me that she had planned to commit suicide. And she had this whole grandiose plan laid out how she had planned to do it. She was going to go to her favorite cafe in San Francisco, have her favorite pastry, her favorite coffee drink, and then go to the Golden Gate Bridge and jump. So she goes to the cafe, she gets her coffee, she gets her pastry, she sits down at one of the tables, and it's a Sunday. And the pink section is open. And there's a picture of me in the pink section, just a blurb mentioning that I'm doing the show, what the show's about, and that it's free. Because that was the thing I thought, as long as I can make it free, people will come, and I don't want cost to be, prohibitive from them. So she thought about it, and someone said about her, and that was free, and she'd kind of make it, and then but she had plans to go to the bridge. So she flipped a coin. Heads, she would go and see my show. Tails, she would go to the Golden Gate Bridge. And it came up heads. And she said she came to the show and she recognized a lot of the things she was feeling. And she said after the show was over, she sat in her seat and she cried. And then she called her sister and told her sister what she was planning, and her sister got her help. So that's why I keep doing it. That's why I keep doing it. So.
Any other questions?
Wow.
Then we'll maybe get some book signing. Anybody want to get a book signed? We can do that.
Yes.
So we've got Outraged, the first one, and I brought some copies of Not a Genuine Black Man. I was able to scrounge up because we are going to do a, next summer, it's the 20th anniversary of its release, and we're going to do a second edition. I've got some new information I found out about the redlining since then. I wrote a new introduction, but this is the current edition. We've got a handful of copies of this.
And you want to tell us just a little tiny hint about your third Topher book?
Well, there's not really a hint I can tell you. I have to go and do it more time than we have, but it's about just briefly. There was a place in Hayward called Russell City. Anybody here ever heard of Russell City? Did you hear? You grew up in Lafayette. Did you know about Russell
I
City?
know about Russell City.
Russell City was the place in post-World War II, the post-World War II East Bay, where they would let African Americans and Latinos live, other than Oakland. And it was in Hayward. It was unincorporated. It was under the auspices of Alameda County, and they had no services because Alameda County wouldn't let them. They had no roads. They had no fire department, no police department, no stoplights. A lot of them didn't have indoor plumbing. But it became a blues place where, Ray Charles came and played, and it was 20 square blocks, 205 families. They all knew each other's kids.
Like
Yeah, almost.
Yeah.
It was a big community. Well, because the fact that they had no services, the county decided that it was blighted. This is during the urban renewal era. And they decided to take this property that was owned by these families through eminent domain. And so that's what they did. The people fought back, and as they fought back, houses start bursting into flames. And they tried to burn them out, and some days the house burned a day for a while.
Wow.
And so what ended up happening is in 1963, they forced the last ones out. The county took the property and they gave the homeowners $2,000 each. Take it or leave it. And then they sold the property to developers for $1964 million. And so I have written a fictional murder story around that, and they'll be able to tell that story, and it's called The Burning of Russell City. And that's what I'm working on.
Thank you. Thanks for telling us about that. It's
Thank
amazing.
you.
So,
Right, it's that, it's what one thing that we all love about mystery stories and murder mystery stories is we learn something about a time in history, something about a place we don't know, or a time in history we don't know about, and it's so compelling that you get pulled in. So, good. Thank you so much.
thank you so much.
Thank you.